On my son's birthday, he said, "The best present would be you disappearing from my life." I stayed silent. Days later, he came back from his trip and, arriving home, found a plaque. "Sale completed." He went crazy. Can you imagine hearing those words from the child you carried for 9 months, raised with love and sacrificed everything for? What would you do if your own son looked you in the eyes and wished you would vanish from existence? I remained silent at that birthday party, but I already knew that when he returned from his business trip, my response would forever change the destiny of our family. My name is Victoria Harrington. I am 62 years old, a retired corporate attorney who spent 35 years building one of the most respected law firms in Boston. I raised 3 children as a single mother after my husband died when they were young. Everything I owned, everything I built, was for them. The house where we celebrated that cursed birthday party was bought with my sweat and sleepless nights, working double shifts to give them the best education money could buy. But that March evening, surrounded by expensive champagne and fake smiles, I realized I had raised a monster. My son David, 34 years old, successful investment banker, stood in the middle of my living room wearing a $2,000 suit I had helped him buy for his first job interview. He was surrounded by his wife Amanda and their 2 children, my grandchildren, who barely acknowledged my presence anymore. The birthday cake I had specially ordered from his favorite bakery sat untouched on the table. "Mom, we need to talk," he had said, pulling me aside to the kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals with love. "Amanda and I have been discussing our future, and honestly, we think it would be better for everyone if you considered moving to a retirement home." I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. "David, this is my house. I'm perfectly capable of living independently." "Are you, though?" Amanda interjected, appearing suddenly with that venomous smile I had learned to recognize. "Yesterday, you forgot to turn off the stove. Last week, you couldn't remember where you put your car keys. We're worried about your safety." Lies, calculated, cruel lies. I had never forgotten the stove, and my keys were exactly where I always left them, in the ceramic bowl by the entrance that David himself had given me for Mother's Day 5 years ago. "Besides," David continued, not meeting my eyes, "this house is too big for you. The maintenance costs are astronomical. Amanda found a lovely place in Sunset Manor. They have activities, people your age." "People my age?" The words came out like broken glass. "David, I'm 62, not 92. I still work as a legal consultant. I still drive. Mom, please." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes was worse than hatred. It was indifference. "We're trying to help you. This house, it's worth almost $2 million now. You could live comfortably in the retirement home and still have money left over." That's when I understood. This wasn't about my well-being. This was about money, my house, my life's work. "And who would manage this money left over?" I asked, my attorney instincts kicking in. David and Amanda exchanged a look. "Well, obviously we would help you with the financial decisions. You know how complicated investments can be." I looked at my son, this man I had molded with my own hands, and felt something die inside me. But something else was being born, something cold and calculating. "I need to think about it," I said finally. "Of course, Mom. Take your time, but don't take too long. We've already scheduled a visit to Sunset Manor for next week." They had already scheduled it, without asking me, without my consent. The party continued as if nothing had happened. I watched my son laugh with his friends, cut the cake, open presents. I watched Amanda whisper to the other wives, probably spreading gossip about the senile old woman who couldn't take care of herself anymore. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had forgotten who Victoria Harrington really was. As they left that night, David hugged me with that fake affection I now recognized as performance. "Think about what we discussed, Mom. It's really for the best." I smiled and nodded. "Of course, darling. I'll think about it very carefully." And I did think. I thought all night long, sitting in my home office, surrounded by 3 decades of legal documents, contacts, and case files. I thought about the irony of raising a son who now wanted to dispose of me like an old piece of furniture. But mostly, I thought about the conversation I would have the next morning with my old friend Margaret Chen, who now ran the most prestigious real estate agency in Boston. They wanted me gone? Very well. But they had forgotten one fundamental detail about women of my generation. We didn't survive what we survived to be discarded by ungrateful children. We survived to fight back, and my counterattack would be legendary. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. David's words echoed in my mind like a battle cry. The best present would be you disappearing from my life. Well, sometimes the universe gives us exactly what we ask for, just not in the way we expect. I made my coffee in the kitchen where my son had delivered his ultimatum, and I smiled. The same granite countertops that had witnessed his first steps, his graduation celebrations, his wedding planning, would now witness his downfall. My first call was to Margaret Chen. We had been friends since law school, and she had built her real estate empire with the same determination I had used to build my legal career. "Victoria, what a pleasant surprise. How are you, darling?" "I'm excellent, Margaret. I need your help with something delicate. How quickly can you sell a house worth approximately $2 million? There was a pause. Margaret knew my house well. She had helped me buy it 25 years ago when I was building my practice and raising 3 children alone. "Your house? Victoria, what's happening?" "Let's just say my son is about to learn an important lesson about underestimating his mother. Can you meet me this afternoon?" "Of course. But Victoria, are you sure about this? That house is your life's work, your sanctuary." "Exactly. And no one takes away what belongs to Victoria Harrington without consequences." After hanging up, I sat in my home office and opened a file I hadn't touched in months. David's financial records. As his mother and former legal advisor, I had copies of everything. His mortgage applications, investment portfolios, business partnership agreements. What I found made my blood run cold, but also filled me with a dangerous satisfaction. David wasn't just greedy. He was desperate. His investment firm was in serious trouble. The documents showed a pattern of risky investments, client complaints, and regulatory warnings. He needed money, and he needed it fast. My house wasn't just a convenient windfall for him. It was his salvation. But there was more, much more. I found emails between David and Amanda discussing not just my house, but my entire estate. They had been planning this for months, maybe years. They had researched retirement homes, calculated my net worth, even consulted with a lawyer about guardianship procedures. "If we can prove she's not mentally competent," Amanda had written in an email dated 6 months ago, "we can get power of attorney and manage everything ourselves." They were planning to have me declared incompetent. My own son was going to destroy my reputation, my dignity, my independence, all for money. I printed every document, organized every email, cataloged every piece of evidence. 35 years as a lawyer had taught me that information is power, and I was about to become very powerful indeed. At 3 o'clock, Margaret arrived with her team of specialists. She walked through my house with the reverence of someone who understood what it represented. "Victoria, this house is worth at least $2.3 million in today's market. With the right staging and marketing strategy, we could get even more. But I have to ask, what's the rush?" I handed her a cup of tea and sat across from her in the living room, where David had celebrated his birthday just 24 hours earlier. "Margaret, what I'm about to tell you must remain confidential until everything is complete. My son and his wife are trying to force me into a retirement home so they can take control of my assets." Margaret's eyes widened. As a successful businesswoman herself, she understood the implications immediately. "Those bastards," she whispered. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to sell this house quickly, quietly, and efficiently. I need the sale to close exactly 1 week from today, while David is on his business trip to Chicago. I need the sale completed sign to be placed on the lawn at exactly 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, 1 hour before his flight lands." "And then what, Victoria?" I smiled, and for the first time in months, it was a genuine smile. "Then, my dear friend, my son will learn that some presents come with consequences he never imagined." Margaret was quiet for a moment, processing everything. "You know this will change everything between you two. There's no going back from something like this." "Margaret, there was no going back the moment he looked me in the eyes and wished I would disappear from his life. I'm simply granting his wish in my own way. We spent the next 3 hours planning every detail. Margaret would use her most exclusive network to find a cash buyer, someone who could close quickly without complications. We would stage the house to perfection, highlighting every detail that made it special, every corner that held memories David was so willing to throw away. "There's something else," I said, as Margaret prepared to leave. "I want the new owner to be someone David would absolutely hate, someone who represents everything he despises." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind? Remember Carlos Mendoza, the immigrant entrepreneur who started with nothing and now owns half the restaurants in Boston? David once called him new money trash at a dinner party. He's been looking for a house in this neighborhood for his family. Victoria, you're diabolical. I love it." That evening, I called my lawyer, Jonathan Pierce, who had been my partner for 15 years before I retired. "Jonathan, I need you to prepare some documents for me. Power of attorney revocations, will modifications, and trust restructuring. I want everything ready by Friday." "Victoria, what's going on? You sound different." "I'm taking control of my life again, Jonathan, and I'm making sure that certain people learn to respect what they tried to take away from me." As I hung up the phone, I looked around the house that would soon belong to someone else. Every room held memories: David's first steps in the hallway, Christmas mornings around the fireplace, graduation parties in the backyard. But those memories belonged to a different David, a son who had died the moment he wished his mother would disappear. The David who was coming back from Chicago on Friday would find a very different Victoria Harrington waiting for him. A Victoria who had spent 3 decades fighting battles in courtrooms, who had raised 3 children alone, who had built an empire from nothing. A Victoria who was about to remind him why you should never underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. I opened my laptop and began typing the email I would send to David on Friday morning, exactly 1 hour before his flight landed. "Darling, I thought carefully about your birthday wish. Surprise! Sometimes mothers grant their children's deepest desires. See you soon. Love, Mom." Outside, the Boston skyline glittered in the distance, and I felt more alive than I had in years. My son wanted me gone? Perfect, but he never specified where I should go or what I should take with me when I left. That was going to be his most expensive mistake. Tuesday morning brought a call that made my heart sing with anticipation. Margaret's voice was practically vibrating with excitement. "Victoria, you're not going to believe this. Carlos Mendoza wants to see the house today, and he's bringing cash." I set down my coffee cup with the satisfaction of a chess master who had just seen her opponent's fatal mistake 3 moves ahead. "How much cash, Margaret?" $2.4 million. No mortgage, no inspections, no delays. He saw the photos we sent last night and fell in love. Apparently, his daughter attends the same private school where your grandchildren go, and she's been begging him to move to this neighborhood. The irony was so perfect, it felt like divine intervention. David's children would be neighbors with the family of the man David had called new money trash. The universe has an exquisite sense of humor. Schedule the viewing for this afternoon. I want to meet Mr. Mendoza personally. Victoria, are you sure? Usually, sellers don't meet buyers directly. Margaret, this isn't a usual sale. This is poetry. I spent the morning preparing my house for what would be its final performance. Every detail had to be perfect. Every room had to tell the story of a life well lived, of sacrifices made, of dreams achieved through hard work and determination. But as I polished the silver frames containing David's childhood photos, I felt something unexpected: sadness. Not regret, never regret, but genuine grief for the relationship that had died in this very room just 3 days ago. At 2 o'clock, Margaret arrived with Carlos Mendoza and his wife Elena. I had expected successful entrepreneurs, but I was struck by their warmth, their genuine appreciation for the craftsmanship and care that had gone into every detail of my home. "Mrs. Harrington," Carlos said, his slight accent making his words more, not less, dignified. "This house, it has soul. You can feel the love in every room." Elena nodded, running her hand along the banister I had polished countless times. "Our children would be so happy here. There's something special about a home where a family was truly loved. If only they knew how recently that love had been rejected and discarded." "Mr. Mendoza," I said, "may I ask what attracted you to this particular house? Honestly, The neighborhood, yes, but mostly the feeling. My wife and I, we came to this country with nothing 40 years ago. We worked 18-hour days to build our business, to give our children opportunities we never had. This house, it represents the American dream we worked so hard to achieve. I looked at this man who understood sacrifice, who valued hard work, who appreciated what it meant to build something with your own hands. Then I thought of my son, who wanted to throw away everything I had built because it was inconvenient to his plans. Mr. Mendoza, I want you to know that you're not just buying a house. You're buying a piece of my heart, a place where I raised my children and built my dreams. I can't think of anyone I'd rather pass it to. His eyes filled with emotion. Mrs. Harrington, we will honor what you built here. We will fill these rooms with love again. We shook hands, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was redemption. After they left, Margaret handled the paperwork with the efficiency of someone who understood the urgency. Carlos is wiring the money tomorrow. We can close on Thursday, and the sign goes up on Friday, exactly as you requested. That evening, I began the second phase of my plan. I called my accountant, Thomas Bradley, who had managed my finances for 20 years. Thomas, I need you to help me with something complex. I want to restructure all my assets before Friday. Victoria, what's happening? This kind of restructuring usually takes months to plan properly. Thomas, do you remember when David came to your office last month asking questions about my financial portfolio? There was a pause. Yes, he said you had asked him to review everything for potential tax optimization. I laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. I never asked him to do any such thing. He was conducting reconnaissance for his plan to control my assets. The silence on the other end told me Thomas was connecting the dots. My God, Victoria, are they really trying to... They're trying to have me declared incompetent so they can manage my money themselves. But here's what they don't know. I've been documenting everything, and tomorrow, I'm making sure they can't touch a penny of what I've built. We worked until midnight, restructuring my investments, creating new trusts, establishing charitable foundations. By Thursday morning, my liquid assets would be protected in ways David's limited financial knowledge could never penetrate. But the crown jewel of my strategy was yet to come. Wednesday brought another call from Margaret. Victoria, you need to see this. Carlos found something interesting when his contractor was doing the final inspection. She handed me photographs of the basement, specifically the area behind the old furnace where I had stored boxes of David's childhood belongings. The contractor had discovered something I had forgotten: the original architectural plans of the house, along with correspondence from 1998, showing that David himself had suggested several of the renovations that added significant value to the property. Do you realize what this means? Margaret asked. I studied the documents, my legal mind processing the implications. It means David has been benefiting from improvements to this house for over 20 years. It means he helped design the very asset he's now trying to steal from me. The evidence was poetic. David's own teenage signature on renovation suggestions, his excited letters about the basement conversion that became his college hangout, his detailed requests for the kitchen remodel that made the house perfect for entertaining. He had helped create his own downfall. Thursday morning, I received the confirmation I'd been waiting for. The wire transfer was complete, the deed was signed, and Carlos Mendoza was officially the new owner of the house where David had grown up. I spent my last day in the house I had called home for 25 years, walking through each room, saying goodbye to the memories I chose to keep, and releasing the ones that no longer served me. In David's old bedroom, I found his high school yearbook. I flipped to his senior quote, "Thanks to my mom, Victoria Harrington, who taught me that with hard work and determination, anything is possible." I closed the book and placed it in the box of belongings I would leave for him to collect. He would need to remember who he used to be before greed and entitlement corrupted his soul. Friday morning came with unseasonable sunshine. I packed my final suitcase, loaded my car with the essentials I would need for my new life, and prepared to watch my son's world explode from a distance. At exactly 2:55 p.m., I parked across the street from what used to be my house. At exactly 3 o'clock, Margaret's team placed the "Sale Completed" sign on the front lawn. At 3:30, I sent David the email I had composed days earlier. "Darling, I thought carefully about your birthday wish. Surprise! Sometimes mothers grant their children's deepest desires. See you soon. Love, Mom. At 4:15, his flight landed. At 5:30, my phone rang. Mom? David's voice was strangled, desperate. Mom, what have you done? I smiled as I answered. Hello, darling. Welcome home. How was your trip? Mom, what have you done? David's voice cracked like a teenage boy's, all his banker sophistication stripped away by pure panic. I was sitting in the elegant lobby of the Four Seasons Hotel, sipping champagne and watching the sunset paint Boston Harbor in shades of gold. My new temporary home had a better view than the house I'd just sold. I granted your birthday wish, sweetheart. Wasn't that thoughtful of me? This isn't funny. There are strangers in our house. There's a sale completed sign on the lawn. Mom, you can't just sell the family home without discussing it with us first. Our house. How quickly possession became shared when panic set in. Actually, darling, I can sell my house whenever I choose. It was my name on the deed, my money that bought it, my signature that mattered. But don't worry, I'm sure Mr. Mendoza will take excellent care of it. Mendoza? The name came out like a curse. You sold our family home to that immigrant? That successful businessman who built an empire from nothing, you mean? Yes, I did. He appreciated the value of hard work in ways that certain people in my family seemed to have forgotten. There was silence on the other end, then the sound of Amanda's voice in the background, sharp and demanding. I could imagine the scene. David standing on the sidewalk in front of his childhood home, watching strangers move furniture through the front door, while his wife hissed recriminations in his ear. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. This is obviously some kind of episode. We need to get you to a doctor. Get this sale reversed. An episode? I laughed, and the sound echoed beautifully in the marble lobby. David, I'm a retired corporate attorney with 35 years of experience in real estate law. I think I'm perfectly capable of executing a property sale. But where are you going to live? What about your things? What about the grandchildren's playroom, the family photos, Dad's office? For the first time since this began, I heard genuine emotion in his voice. Not concern for me, but grief for his own lost childhood, his own lost inheritance. The grandchildren who barely acknowledge my existence? The family photos of memories you were ready to warehouse in Sunset Manor? Your father's office that you wanted to liquidate for your own financial benefit? That's not... We never said... David, stop. I have copies of every email between you and Amanda. I know about your firm's financial troubles. I know about your plan to have me declared incompetent. I know about the guardianship attorney you consulted. I know everything. The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. How? How do you think? You're talking to a woman who built a successful law practice from nothing, who raised 3 children alone, who survived things you can't even imagine. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate when my own son tried to steal my life from me? We weren't trying to steal anything. We were trying to help you. By placing me in a nursing home against my will, by taking control of my assets, by declaring me mentally incompetent? David, that's not help. That's theft with a smile. I could hear Amanda in the background, her voice getting louder, more insistent. Then David was back. Amanda wants to talk to you. I'm sure she does. Put her on. Amanda's voice was sugar over poison, the same tone she'd used at the birthday party. Victoria, honey, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We never wanted to put you in a nursing home. We were just worried about you living alone in such a big house. Amanda, darling, let me save us both some time. I know about your Google searches for guardianship laws. I know about your calculations of my net worth. I know about your real estate assessments of my property. I know about your shopping trips to furniture stores, planning how you'd redecorate once you moved in. So please, spare me the performance. Her mask slipped completely. You bitter old woman. You're destroying your own family out of spite. No, dear. I'm protecting myself from family members who view me as a financial opportunity rather than a human being. There's a difference. David took the phone back. Mom, please, can we talk about this rationally? Maybe there's a way to fix this. As if 35 years of sacrifice and love could be repaired with a conversation. Of course we can talk, David. I'm staying at the Four Seasons penthouse suite. Why don't you and Amanda come by tomorrow evening for dinner, say 7 o'clock? You're staying at the Four Seasons? Mom, that costs thousands of dollars a night. Yes, it does. Fortunately, I have $2.4 million of house sale money to cover my expenses. Amazing how financial independence works, isn't it? I could practically hear his brain calculating. 2.4 million. More than he'd expected, more than he'd planned for, and completely out of his reach. Tomorrow at 7, I continued. We'll have a lovely dinner, and I'll explain exactly how your birthday wish has been granted. Oh, and David? Dress nicely. The Four Seasons has standards. After I hung up, I ordered another glass of champagne and called my daughter Sarah in California. Unlike David, Sarah had built her own successful career as a pediatric surgeon without trying to manipulate me for financial support. Mom, how are you? David called me in a panic, saying something about you selling the house. I did sell the house, sweetheart. It's a long story, but your brother learned some hard truths about treating family like financial assets. Oh, Mom. What did he do? I told her everything. The birthday ultimatum, the nursing home plan, the competency scheme, the asset grab. Sarah listened in horrified silence. I can't believe David would do that to you. After everything you sacrificed for us. Belief is irrelevant when you have documentation, darling. But I want you to know that this doesn't affect you or Michael. Your trust funds are secure. Your inheritance is protected. This is between David and me. What are you going to do? I looked out at Boston Harbor, at the city where I'd built my career, where I'd raised my children, where I'd learned that sometimes love isn't enough to protect you from the people who are supposed to love you back. I'm going to teach your brother that actions have consequences, and I'm going to make sure he never underestimates his mother again. After we hung up, I called room service and ordered their finest dinner. Tomorrow evening, I would serve David and Amanda the most expensive meal of their lives. Because by the time dessert was served, they would understand that their birthday wish had cost them far more than they ever imagined. But first, I had one more call to make. Jonathan, it's Victoria. Are the new trust documents ready? Excellent. And the power of attorney revocations? Perfect. Tomorrow evening is going to be very educational for my son. I raised my champagne glass to the Boston skyline and smiled. Phase 1 was complete. Phase 2 would be even more satisfying. If you're watching this story unfold and you've ever been underestimated by your own family, subscribe and tell me in the comments. How did you prove them wrong? Saturday evening arrived with the precision of a Swiss watch and the anticipation of a long-awaited reckoning. I had spent the day preparing for what would be the most important dinner party of my life, not because of what I would serve, but because of what I would reveal. The Four Seasons penthouse suite was transformed into a stage for justice. I had arranged for their finest china, their most elegant silverware, their most expensive wine. If this was to be my son's education in consequences, it would be delivered with style befitting the woman who had raised him. At exactly 7 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find David and Amanda, both dressed in their finest, but carrying themselves like defendants approaching the bench. "Mom," David said, stepping forward to hug me with the same fake warmth he'd displayed at his birthday party. I allowed the embrace, noting how his hands trembled slightly against my back. Fear has its own signature, and I had learned to read it in 35 years of legal practice. "David, Amanda, welcome. Please come in. I've ordered us a lovely dinner." They followed me into the dining area, their eyes taking in the opulent surroundings with barely concealed resentment. I could see them calculating the cost, imagining how much of their inheritance I was spending on this extravagance. "Mom, this is excessive," Amanda said, her voice tight. "Do you really need all this space just for yourself?" "Oh, darling, this isn't just for me. I have a guest joining us shortly." "Someone I thought you should meet." David froze in the act of pulling out Amanda's chair. "A guest?" "Yes, Carlos Mendoza, the new owner of my former house. He wanted to thank me personally for such a smooth transaction, and I thought it would be lovely for you to meet the man who now owns your childhood home." The color drained from Amanda's face. David's jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle working beneath his skin. "You invited him here? To dinner with us?" "Of course. He's such a charming man, and his family is so grateful for their new home." Did you know his daughter Sophia is in the same class as your Emma at Brookstone Academy? They'll practically be neighbors now." Before David could respond, there was another knock at the door. I opened it to reveal Carlos Mendoza, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit and carrying a bottle of what I recognized as a very expensive vintage. "Mrs. Harrington, thank you so much for inviting me. And this must be your son David and his wife Amanda." Carlos approached them with genuine warmth, extending his hand to David, who had no choice but to accept it or appear openly rude. "Mr. Mendoza," David managed through gritted teeth. "Please call me Carlos. Mrs. Harrington has told me so much about you. You must be very proud of your mother. What an incredible woman to have built such a successful legal practice while raising 3 children alone." Amanda's smile looked like it might crack her face. "Yes, Victoria is quite accomplished." "Accomplished? She's extraordinary. You know, when I first came to this country, I had nothing but dreams and determination. Your mother reminds me of that spirit. She built something beautiful, and now she's chosen to share it with my family. We are so grateful." I watched David's face as Carlos spoke, saw the exact moment when the reality hit him. This man wasn't the stereotype David had constructed in his mind. Carlos was educated, articulate, successful, and genuinely appreciative of what I had built. Everything David pretended to be but had failed to become. "Carlos," I said, "please tell David and Amanda about your business. I think they'd be fascinated." "Well, I started with one small restaurant 40 years ago. Now we have 37 locations across New England, plus a catering company and a food distribution network. Last year we grossed about $80 million. The number hung in the air like a slap. David's investment firm, even in its best years, had never approached that kind of success. $80 million, Amanda repeated faintly. "Yes, but you know what I'm most proud of? All 3 of my children graduated from Harvard. My oldest daughter is a doctor, my son is an environmental lawyer, and my youngest just started her residency in pediatric surgery. They understand that success means using your achievements to lift others up, not tear them down." The comparison was subtle, but devastating. Carlos's children honored their parents' sacrifices. David was trying to steal from his. "That's wonderful," David said, his voice strained. "And you're happy with the house? Happy? David, that house is a masterpiece. The craftsmanship, the attention to detail, the love that went into every renovation. My wife Elena cried when she saw the kitchen where your mother prepared thousands of meals for your family. She said she could feel the love in the walls." I watched David's face crumble slightly at the mention of those meals, those memories he had been so willing to discard for financial gain. Dinner was served with the precision of a military operation. As we ate, I guided the conversation with the skill of a veteran attorney leading a witness. "Carlos, tell them about your children's education fund." "Ah, yes. From the day each child was born, Elena and I saved every penny we could for their education. We worked 18-hour days, lived in tiny apartments, drove old cars, but we never touched that education money. It was sacred to us." "How much did you save?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Over the years? Nearly $2 million, but it was worth every sacrifice to see them achieve their dreams. $2 million, the approximate value of my house before the recent sale." I let that number sink into David and Amanda's consciousness. "And now," I said, setting down my wine glass, "your children are successful professionals who would never dream of trying to steal from their parents." The silence at the table was deafening. Carlos looked confused by the sudden tension, but David and Amanda understood exactly what I was implying. "Perhaps," I continued, "we should discuss why I really invited everyone here tonight." Carlos excused himself politely, sensing the family conversation that was about to unfold. I walked him to the door with genuine affection. "Carlos, thank you for everything. Take care of that house. Fill it with the love it deserves." "We will, Victoria. And if you ever need anything at all, you call us. You're family now." Family. When was the last time my own son had made me feel like family? I returned to the dining room where David and Amanda sat in frozen silence. The elegant dinner suddenly felt like a funeral meal. "Now then," I said, settling back into my chair, "let's discuss your birthday wish and how thoroughly I've granted it." David's hands were shaking as he reached for his wine glass. "Mom, please. I was angry that night. I didn't mean— Oh, but you did mean it, darling. You meant every word. And the emails I found between you and Amanda prove it. The consultations with guardianship lawyers prove it. The calculations of my net worth prove it. The plan to have me declared incompetent proves it. I opened the manila folder I had placed beside my chair and spread the documents across the table like a dealer revealing a winning hand. You wanted me to disappear from your life, David. Congratulations. Your wish is about to come true in ways you never imagined. Amanda leaned forward, her eyes scanning the papers. What is all this? This, my dear daughter-in-law, is documentation of every step in your plan to steal my life. But more importantly, these are the documents showing how I've protected myself from both of you, permanently. David's face went pale. What do you mean, permanently? I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it was a smile of pure, undiluted satisfaction. I mean, darling boy, that your birthday wish has cost you far more than a house. It's cost you everything. I spread the legal documents across the dining table like a chess master revealing checkmate. Each paper represented months of careful planning, decades of legal expertise, and the cold fury of a mother betrayed by her own child. Let's start with the most important document, I said, placing a thick legal brief directly in front of David. This is the complete restructuring of my estate, effective as of yesterday morning. David's hands trembled as he picked up the papers. I watched his banker's eyes scan the numbers, saw the exact moment when comprehension dawned. His face went from pale to gray to green. This can't be legal, Amanda whispered, leaning over his shoulder to read. Oh, but it is, darling. Perfectly, irrevocably legal. You see, when you spend 35 years practicing law, you learn a few things about protecting assets from people who want to steal them. David looked up from the documents, his eyes wide with something approaching panic. Mom, you've given away everything. The trust funds, the investment portfolios, the life insurance policies. Where did it all go? Excellent question. Let me explain your new financial reality, step by step. I pulled out a second document, a beautifully bound portfolio that had cost me $500 to prepare. If this was going to destroy my son's greed, it would do so with style. First, the Victoria Harrington Foundation for Educational Excellence. 50% of my liquid assets, approximately $3.8 million, now belongs to a charitable foundation that provides scholarships for first-generation college students from immigrant families. Amanda gasped. You gave $4 million to strangers? I gave $4 million to young people who understand the value of hard work and sacrifice. Young people who would never dream of betraying the parents who made their success possible. David was frantically flipping through pages, his banker's mind trying to find loopholes, escape clauses, anything that could reverse what I had done. Mom, this foundation, who controls it? An excellent board of directors. Carlos Mendoza serves as chairman, along with my former law partner Jonathan Pierce, my accountant Thomas Bradley, and Dr. Sarah Chen from Children's Hospital. All people who understand that money should be used to build futures, not destroy families. But you can't just— there have to be family provisions, survivor benefits. Oh, there are. Very generous ones. My daughter Sarah receives her trust fund intact, plus an additional $500,000 for her children's education. My son Michael receives the same. They've both built successful careers without trying to rob their mother, so they're rewarded accordingly. And me? David's voice was barely a whisper. I pulled out the final document, the one I had crafted with particular care. For you, my dear son, I have something very special. The paper I placed before him was elegant, printed on expensive letterstock, sealed with my personal seal. It looked official and important. David opened it eagerly, hope flickering in his eyes. Then he read it. This is just a dollar bill. Not just any dollar bill, darling. That's your complete inheritance. $1 as required by law to prevent you from contesting the will, along with this lovely note explaining that your birthday wish has been granted in full. I watched him read the note I had written in my finest calligraphy. To my son David, who wished for me to disappear from his life, your wish is granted. Consider this dollar a reminder that some gifts come with consequences you never imagined. Love, Mother. Amanda snatched the paper from his hands, reading it with growing hysteria. This isn't legal. You can't disinherit your own child over one conversation. Actually, I can. And I have documentation of far more than one conversation. I have months of emails, recorded phone calls, witness statements, and evidence of conspiracy to defraud an elderly person. Would you like me to call the district attorney's office? I have his direct number. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. David and Amanda understood that I wasn't bluffing. In 35 years of legal practice, I had never made a threat I couldn't carry out. But what about us? David asked, his voice breaking. What about our children? What about our future? What about it? You're both capable adults with successful careers. You can build your own future the same way I built mine, through hard work, sacrifice, and integrity. Novel concepts, I know, but quite effective. Mom, our house is mortgaged to the maximum. David's firm is in trouble. We were counting on— You were counting on stealing from me, I interrupted. You were counting on destroying my independence so you could plunder my life's work. You were counting on me being weak, helpless, and stupid. You counted wrong. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights of Boston. Behind me, I could hear Amanda crying and David hyperventilating. The sound should have broken my heart. Instead, it filled me with a cold satisfaction I had never experienced before. There is, however, one possibility for redemption, I said without turning around. David's head snapped up. What do you mean? I mean that unlike you, I'm not completely heartless. There is a way for you to earn back a place in my life and my will. I returned to the table and sat down, watching them hang on my every word like drowning people reaching for a life preserver. You have 1 year, I said simply. 1 year for what? Amanda asked desperately. 1 year to prove that you understand the value of family, the meaning of sacrifice, and the importance of earning rather than taking. 1 year to show me that the son I raised still exists somewhere inside the greedy stranger who wished for my disappearance. What do we have to do? I smiled, and this time it contained a mixture of hope and steel. You're going to learn what it means to build something from nothing. You're going to discover how it feels to sacrifice for family instead of exploiting them. You're going to understand why respect is earned, not inherited. I pulled out one final document. This one sealed and marked confidential. Inside this envelope are your instructions. Follow them exactly for 1 year. Succeed, and you'll earn back not just your inheritance, but something far more valuable, my respect. Fail, and the dollar bill on the table represents the sum total of what our relationship was worth to you. David reached for the envelope with shaking hands. And if we refuse, then you get your birthday wish permanently. I disappear from your life completely, and you never see me or speak to me again. Your children grow up without knowing their grandmother, and you spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been different if you had chosen love over greed. The silence stretched for several minutes. Finally, Amanda spoke. What's in the envelope? Instructions for rebuilding the relationship you destroyed. A roadmap back to being the son I raised instead of the stranger who betrayed me. A chance to prove that family means more to you than money. David looked at the envelope, then at the dollar bill, then at me. And after the year? After the year, we'll see if you remember how to be my son. I stood and walked toward my bedroom, leaving them alone with their choices and their consequences. The envelope is yours if you want it, I called over my shoulder. But remember, this time you have to earn what you want instead of trying to steal it. I closed the bedroom door and listened to the murmur of their desperate conversation. Tomorrow would begin their year of redemption, or their permanent exile from my life. Either way, Victoria Harrington would never again be underestimated by anyone. 3 days passed before David called. I had expected him to contact me within hours, desperation driving him to immediate action. The delay told me he and Amanda had spent those days frantically exploring alternatives, probably consulting lawyers, accountants, anyone who might help them find a loophole in my perfectly constructed legal maze. There were no loopholes. I hadn't survived 35 years in corporate law by leaving back doors for my opponents. Mom? His voice was different, smaller, humbled. We want to know what's in the envelope. I was sitting in my new office, a corner suite I had rented in downtown Boston, with a view of the harbor. My nameplate read, Victoria Harrington Consultant, because retirement, I had decided, was for people who had nothing left to prove. Are you calling because you want to rebuild our relationship, or because you're desperate about your financial situation? The pause that followed told me everything I needed to know. Both, he said finally. Mom, I know what I said was terrible. I know what we planned was wrong, but I also know that Amanda and I are drowning. And our kids. Stop. The word cut through his rambling like a blade. David, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it honestly. No manipulation, no playing the grandchildren card, no emotional blackmail. Are you ready to earn back what you threw away, or are you just looking for another way to get what you think you deserve? Another long pause. Then, I'm ready to earn it. Good. Tonight, 7 o'clock, meet me at Mendoza's restaurant on Newbury Street. Come alone. Alone? But Amanda made her choices when she researched guardianship laws and calculated my net worth. This is between you and me, the son and the mother whose relationship died at a birthday party. If you rebuild trust with me, we can discuss including her later. I hung up before he could argue. Mendoza's restaurant was Carlos's flagship establishment, the one he had built from nothing 40 years ago. I had chosen it deliberately. David would be surrounded by the success of the man he had once dismissed as new money trash, eating food prepared by a family that understood the value of hard work and sacrifice. David arrived exactly on time, dressed in his expensive suit, but carrying himself like a defendant awaiting sentencing. Carlos greeted us personally, his warmth toward me contrasting sharply with David's obvious discomfort. Mrs. Harrington, and this must be your son David. Welcome to our family restaurant. David managed a strained smile as Carlos seated us at his best table. I watched my son's eyes take in the elegant surroundings, the obvious prosperity, the respect Carlos commanded from his staff and customers. Everything David had assumed he was superior to was, in fact, superior to him. After we ordered, I placed the sealed envelope on the table between us. Before I open this, I said, I want you to understand something. This isn't a game, and it's not a negotiation. These are the terms under which you can earn back a relationship with me. You can accept them or reject them, but you cannot modify them. David nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed nervously. I opened the envelope and withdrew the document I had crafted with the precision of a master strategist. First, I read aloud, you will resign from your current position at Whitmore Investment Group within 30 days. What? Mom, that's my career, my livelihood. Your career built on other people's money, taking fees for advice that led your firm into regulatory trouble? That career? He fell silent, and I continued. Second, you will take a position as a junior analyst at Pearson Associates, my former law firm. Jonathan has agreed to hire you at entry-level salary, $45,000 per year. You will learn what it means to earn advancement through merit rather than entitlement. The number hit him like a physical blow. $45,000 was less than Amanda spent on clothes in a year. Third, you and Amanda will sell your current house and move into a modest 2-bedroom apartment. You will drive used cars, shop at normal grocery stores, and live within the means of your new salary. But the children's schools, their activities, will be funded by a separate education trust I've established, but only if you complete this program successfully. Your children will not suffer for your mistakes, but they will learn that privilege must be earned. David's hands were shaking as he reached for his water glass. I felt a moment of sympathy, remembering the little boy who had once built blanket forts in my living room. Then I remembered his birthday wish, and my resolve hardened. Fourth, you will spend 10 hours every weekend volunteering at charitable organizations, not writing checks, not attending galas, but actual hands-on work helping people who have less than you. You will learn what real hardship looks like. And fifth, I continued, watching his face carefully, you will attend family counseling sessions with me every month. We will work with a professional to understand how our relationship became so damaged that my own son could wish for my disappearance. I folded the document and looked directly into his eyes. Those are the terms. 1 year. No exceptions, no modifications, no shortcuts. At the end of that year, if you have completed every requirement with genuine commitment rather than grudging compliance, we will revisit your inheritance and our relationship." David was quiet for a long time, staring at the document as if it might change if he looked at it hard enough. What if I can't do it? What if the salary isn't enough? What if Amanda can't handle the lifestyle change? Then you get your birthday wish permanently. You disappear from my life, and I disappear from yours. And if I succeed? For the first time since this began, I allowed myself to hope. If you succeed, you might remember what it was like to be the son I raised instead of the stranger who broke my heart. Our dinner arrived, prepared by a kitchen staff that understood the pride that comes from creating something beautiful with your own hands. David ate mechanically, his mind clearly racing through the implications of what I had laid before him. "Mom," he said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think there's any part of you that still loves me?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with years of pain and disappointment. I thought about the little boy who had once told me I was the strongest person in the world, who had promised to take care of me when I got old, who had signed his name to renovation plans because he wanted to help make our house perfect. "David," I said softly, "I will always love the son I raised. The question is whether that son still exists, or whether greed and entitlement have killed him completely." Tears appeared in his eyes for the first time since this ordeal began. "I want to find out. Then sign the document." He reached into his jacket for a pen, paused for a moment with his hand hovering over the paper, then signed his name with the same careful penmanship I had taught him in elementary school. "1 year," he said. "1 year," I agreed. As we walked out of the restaurant, Carlos stopped us at the door. "Mrs. Harrington, I hope you don't mind me saying, but what you're doing for your son is beautiful. Teaching him to earn rather than expect. That's real love." David looked surprised by the comment, as if he hadn't considered that my actions might be motivated by love rather than revenge. Maybe there was hope for him after all. "Turn on the notification bell, because what happens next will show you whether a mother's love can truly transform a heart poisoned by greed." Watching David's world crumble was like watching a controlled demolition, precise, inevitable, and strangely beautiful in its thoroughness. Within 2 weeks of signing the document, his carefully constructed life of privilege began collapsing exactly as I had designed it to. The first call came on a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing legal briefs in my new office when my phone rang with David's number. "Mom, they won't let me resign." I set down my coffee and smiled. "Explain." "Whitmore is refusing to accept my resignation. They're saying I have contractual obligations, pending client reviews, regulatory compliance issues. They want to keep me until the SEC investigation is complete." "And how long will that take?" 6 to 8 months, maybe longer." Perfect. I had counted on this complication when I crafted his redemption requirements. "David, what did you learn in your first year of law school about contractual obligations? That contracts can be broken if there's sufficient cause." "Exactly. And what constitutes sufficient cause?" There was a long pause. "You want me to give them sufficient cause to fire me. I want you to choose between your old life and your new one. You can't have both." The silence stretched until I could practically hear his internal struggle. His job at Whitmore represented everything he thought he was: successful, important, financially secure. But it also represented everything that had led him to betray me. What should I do? What would a man with integrity do, David? Another pause. "Tell the truth." "Then tell the truth." He hung up without saying goodbye, and I returned to my legal briefs with satisfaction. Phase 1 of his real education was about to begin. The next call came 3 days later. "Mom, I did it. I told them everything." "Everything?" "About the firm's irregular practices, about the client funds that were mismanaged, about the false reports to regulators. They fired me immediately and are probably going to press criminal charges." I felt a surge of something that might have been pride. "How do you feel?" "Terrified, but also lighter somehow. Like I've been carrying a weight I didn't even realize was there." "David, that weight was called compromise. Now you know what it feels like to be free of it." "But Mom, Amanda is furious. She's saying I've destroyed our family's future." "Has she seen the apartment listings I sent you?" "She refuses to look at them. She's talking about staying with her mother, maybe filing for separation." This was the moment I had been waiting for, the point where David would have to choose between his enabling wife and his redemption. David, let me be very clear about something. If Amanda chooses to leave rather than support you in becoming a better man, then she was never the partner you needed. Your choice isn't between me and her. Your choice is between the person you were and the person you could become. What if she takes the kids? Then you'll fight for them the same way I'm fighting for you, with love, determination, and an absolute refusal to give up. That weekend, I drove to the modest apartment complex in Cambridge, where David had reluctantly agreed to look at units. I found him sitting in his BMW in the parking lot, staring at the building like it was a prison. "Having second thoughts?" I asked, tapping on his window. He rolled it down, and I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in years: vulnerability without manipulation. "Mom, I don't know how to live like this. I don't know how to be poor." "You're not going to be poor, David. You're going to be normal. There's a difference." I got into the passenger seat of his car, soon to be sold and replaced with something more modest, and looked at the building where he would learn to live within his means. "Tell me something," I said. "Do you remember the apartment where we lived when you were in elementary school, after your father died? The one on Commonwealth Avenue, with the radiator that clanged and the neighbor who played piano at midnight? That's the one. Do you remember being unhappy there?" He was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Actually, no. I remember it being cozy. I remember us eating dinner at that tiny table, doing homework together at the kitchen counter. I remember feeling safe. We were happy there, David. Not because we had everything, but because we had each other and we were working towards something better together. But Amanda fell in love with your money, not with you. If she can't love the man you're becoming, then she never really loved you at all." We toured the apartment together, a clean, modest 2-bedroom with good light and reasonable rent. As we walked through the empty rooms, I watched David's face change. The panic was being replaced by something that looked almost like curiosity. "It's smaller than our current living room," he said. "It's exactly the size you need. No more, no less. The kids will have to share a bedroom, like you did with your siblings. It didn't kill you then, and it won't kill them now." 2 weeks later, David moved in alone. Amanda had indeed chosen to stay with her mother, taking the children and filing for temporary separation. I found him on moving day, sitting on a used couch he had bought at a thrift store, surrounded by boxes that contained the remnants of his former life. "She's gone, Mom. She took Emma and Jake and said she won't let them live in poverty and shame." I sat beside him on the couch that had probably cost less than a single bottle of wine from his old life. "David, do you know what your father told me the night before he died?" He looked up, surprised. We rarely spoke about his father anymore. "He said that the worst thing that could happen to our children wouldn't be if we left them poor. It would be if we left them entitled. He said entitled children become entitled adults, and entitled adults never learn to appreciate anything because they never had to earn anything. Do you think that's what happened to me?" The question hung in the air like incense, heavy with the weight of years and choices and consequences. "I think you forgot that everything worthwhile requires sacrifice. I think you started believing that success meant taking rather than earning. I think you confused wealth with worth." David leaned back against the couch and closed his eyes. "So what happens now? Now you learn what I should have taught you a long time ago. You learn that a man's value isn't measured by what he owns, but by what he's willing to sacrifice for the people he loves. And if Amanda never comes back, then you'll show your children what it looks like to rebuild your life with integrity. And maybe they'll love you for who you are instead of what you can give them." That evening, I helped David unpack his boxes in his new apartment. We worked in comfortable silence, and for the first time in years, it felt like we were on the same side of something. As I prepared to leave, he hugged me. Not the performative embrace of his birthday party, but a real hug from a son who was finally beginning to understand what he had almost lost. "Mom, thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me." I looked around his small, modest apartment, at the life he was building from the ashes of his greed, and smiled. "David, real mothers don't give up on their children. We just sometimes have to teach them lessons they don't want to learn." Outside his apartment building, I sat in my car for a moment before driving away. Month 1 was complete. 11 months to go. But for the first time since his birthday wish, I had hope that the son I raised might still be worth saving. Month 3 brought the phone call I had been both expecting and dreading. David's voice was exhausted, but there was something new in it, a quality I hadn't heard since he was a teenager working his first job at the local grocery store. "Mom, I need to tell you about something that happened today." I was in my office, reviewing contracts for my new consulting business because watching my son's redemption had reminded me how much I loved the practice of law. Success, I had discovered, was far sweeter when it came from choice rather than necessity. "I'm listening." I was at the food bank, doing my volunteer hours, and this woman came in with 2 kids. She was maybe my age, dressed in clothes that were clean but worn. Her kids were hungry, Mom. Really hungry. And she was apologizing to the volunteer coordinators for needing help, like being poor was something to be ashamed of. I waited, sensing he had more to say. I helped her load groceries into her car, this beat-up Honda that was barely running. And as she was leaving, she thanked me, and I realized something that made me feel sick. "What did you realize?" 6 months ago, I would have looked at her and thought she was beneath me. I would have assumed she was lazy or making bad choices or gaming the system. I would have judged her without knowing anything about her story. The pause that followed was heavy with shame and recognition. But today I asked about her story. "Do you know what I learned?" "Tell me." "Her husband died in a car accident 2 years ago. She was a stay-at-home mom with no recent work experience. She's been applying for jobs everywhere, but childcare costs more than most entry-level positions pay. She's trying to go back to school at night to get her nursing degree, but she can barely afford gas money to get there." I closed my eyes, remembering my own desperate years after David's father died, remembering the nights I worked late while my children slept, remembering the constant fear that I wouldn't be able to provide for them. "She's me, Mom. She's exactly what you were when Dad died. And if someone like me from 6 months ago had been in charge of deciding whether she deserved help, you would have denied it. I would have denied it without a second thought. I would have convinced myself that was fiscal responsibility when it was really just cruelty." I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness yet, but recognition that my son was finally seeing clearly for the first time in years. "David, what did you do?" "I gave her my phone number. Not for anything inappropriate," he added quickly. "I told her about some job openings at Jonathan's firm, positions that offer flexible hours and childcare assistance. I told her about the scholarship programs I've been researching for my own situation." "Your own situation?" "Mom, I've been looking into going back to school. Jonathan suggested I get my MBA, maybe specialize in nonprofit management or social impact investing. He says there are scholarships for people who want to use business skills to help communities instead of exploit them." I set down my pen and really listened to his voice. The entitlement was gone. The assumption that the world owed him something had been replaced by genuine curiosity about how he could contribute to something larger than himself. "That sounds like an excellent idea. How would you pay for it?" "Student loans, like normal people do. Part-time evening classes while I continue working at the firm. It'll take longer, but I'll appreciate it more if I earn it myself." We talked for another hour, and I found myself remembering why I had once been so proud of this young man. Somewhere beneath the greed and entitlement, the son I had raised was still alive. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Amanda stood in my doorway, looking older and more tired than I had ever seen her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup. In their place was a woman who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Victoria, we need to talk." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where I had once counseled clients through their own family disasters. "How are the children?" I asked. "Confused, angry. They don't understand why Daddy lives in a small apartment now, or why Mommy cries so much." "And how are you?" Amanda's carefully constructed mask finally cracked. "I'm miserable. I'm living with my mother, who reminds me every day that she warned me about marrying someone who was too good to be true. The kids ask about David constantly, and She stopped, struggling with words that clearly didn't come easily. "I miss him. I miss the man he's becoming." "The man he's becoming?" "Victoria. Emma's teacher called me last week. She said David has been volunteering at the school, helping kids with math during his lunch breaks. He drives there in this beat-up Toyota he bought used, wearing clothes from Target, and he's happier than I've seen him in years." I remained silent, allowing her to process her own realizations. "He took the kids to the Science Museum last weekend. Do you know what he spent? $30 total. $30 for admission, hot dogs from a cart, and ice cream afterward. Emma said it was the best day she'd had since we separated. What does that tell you? That I've been an idiot. That I fell in love with his lifestyle instead of him. That I've been so focused on what we were losing that I couldn't see what he was gaining. Amanda reached into her purse and pulled out a letter, handwritten on plain paper, instead of her usual monogrammed stationery. He writes to the kids every day. Real letters, not texts or emails. He tells them about his work, his volunteer activities, the people he's meeting. He writes about books he's reading, places he wants to take them when he saves enough money. She handed me one of the letters, and I read David's careful handwriting describing his conversation with a homeless veteran at the soup kitchen, his excitement about starting business school, his plans to build a better life based on service instead of profit. This is the man I should have married, Amanda said quietly. Not the investment banker with the expensive suits and the arrogant attitude. This man who cares about other people, who works for something bigger than himself. So what are you going to do about it? I want to come home, not to the old house, not to the old life. I want to come home to David, wherever that is. Even if home is a 2-bedroom apartment and a used car. Especially then. Victoria, I've learned something these past 3 months. Money doesn't make you happy, but watching someone you love become their best self, that's worth everything. I looked at this woman who had once calculated my net worth and planned my incarceration in a nursing home. The person sitting across from me was different, humbled, genuine, stripped of pretense. Amanda, if you go back to David, it has to be forever. No more leaving when times get tough. No more choosing comfort over character. Are you prepared for that? Yes. I want to build something real with him. Something we earn together instead of something we inherit or steal. Then you should know something. David's year of redemption isn't just about earning back his inheritance. It's about earning back his self-respect. If you support that journey instead of undermining it, you'll both be richer than you ever imagined. What if he doesn't want me back? Amanda, that man writes letters to his children every day and volunteers at their school during lunch breaks. He's not doing that because he stopped loving his family. He's doing it because he's finally learning how to love them properly. 3 days later, I received a call that made my heart soar. Mom, Amanda and I are getting remarried. Remarried? We want to do it right this time. Simple ceremony, just family and close friends. We want to make vows based on who we really are instead of who we thought we were supposed to be. And she's moving into the apartment? We're moving into a slightly bigger place. Still modest, still within our means, but big enough for all of us to build something real together. As I hung up the phone, I realized that my plan had worked better than I had ever hoped. I hadn't just taught David about consequences, I had taught him about choices. And for the first time in years, he was choosing love over greed, character over comfort. Only 3 months remained in his year of redemption, but I was beginning to suspect that the real transformation was already complete. Share my story with someone who needs to know that it's never too late for people to change, to grow, and to choose love over greed. 9 months into David's year of redemption, I received the call that would determine whether his transformation was genuine or just another performance. The voice on the other end belonged to Detective Sarah Martinez from the Boston Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. Mrs. Harrington, we need to speak with you about your son David's testimony in the Whitmore Investment Group case. I was in my kitchen. Yes, I had bought a small house in Cambridge, modest but mine, preparing dinner for what had become a weekly tradition. Family dinners with David, Amanda, and my grandchildren in their small but happy apartment. What about his testimony? Ma'am, your son's cooperation has been instrumental in building our case against his former employers. His willingness to provide documentation and testimony about fraudulent practices has helped us recover over $12 million for defrauded clients. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, the same chair where I had once planned David's downfall. Now it seemed I was learning about his redemption. Detective Martinez, what exactly are you telling me? I'm telling you that your son has become the key witness in one of the largest financial fraud cases in Massachusetts history. But Mrs. Harrington, there's something else you need to know. The pause that followed made my blood run cold. The defense team has made David an offer. They're willing to make him a very wealthy man if he changes his testimony. We're talking about enough money to solve all his financial problems and set his family up for life. The kitchen spun around me. This was the ultimate test, not just of David's commitment to his redemption, but of whether he had truly learned that some things were more valuable than money. How much money are we talking about, Detective? $5 million, cash, offshore account, completely untraceable if he cooperates with them instead of us. $5 million. More than twice what my house had sold for. Enough to restore David's old lifestyle and then some. Enough to make everything he had suffered through seem worthless by comparison. What did he tell them? That's why I'm calling you, Mrs. Harrington. He asked for 24 hours to consider the offer. He said he needed to talk to someone whose opinion mattered to him. I closed my eyes and felt the weight of 35 years of motherhood settle on my shoulders. Every choice I had made, every sacrifice I had endured, every lesson I had tried to teach had led to this moment. When is he supposed to give them his answer? Tomorrow morning. Mrs. Harrington, I have to ask, do you think your son will take the money? The question hung in the air like a prayer waiting for an answer. 6 months ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. The old David would have taken the money and convinced himself he deserved it. But this David? Detective Martinez, my son will do the right thing. How can you be so sure? Because I raised him to, and it just took him 34 years to remember. That evening, I drove to David's apartment for what I suspected would be the most important conversation of both our lives. I found him sitting on his used couch, staring at a piece of paper that I assumed contained the details of the defense team's offer. Amanda was at the kitchen table, helping Emma with homework, while Jake built something elaborate with Legos on the living room floor. The scene was so perfectly normal, so genuinely happy, that it broke my heart to think it might all be destroyed by greed again. "Mom," David said when he saw me, "I need to tell you something." "I know about the offer, David." His face went pale. "How?" "The police called me. They wanted to know if I thought you would take it." "What did you tell them?" I sat beside him on the couch and looked around the apartment that had become a home, not because of what it contained, but because of how the people in it loved each other. "I told them you would do the right thing. Was I wrong?" David was quiet for a long moment, watching his children, his wife, the life he had built from the ashes of his former existence. "Mom, do you know what $5 million would mean for us? Tell me." Emma could go to any college she wanted without student loans. Jake could have every opportunity I once thought I could give him. Amanda and I could buy a house, travel, never worry about money again. And I would become everything I used to be. I would become the man who wished his mother would disappear from his life. He set the paper down and looked at me with eyes that were clear and determined. "I've been sitting here for 3 hours trying to convince myself that taking this money would be different from what I tried to do to you. But it wouldn't be different, would it? It would be exactly the same." "How so?" "I would be stealing from people who trusted me. I would be prioritizing money over integrity. I would be teaching my children that wealth matters more than character." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the modest neighborhood where he had learned to be happy with enough instead of always wanting more. "Do you know what Emma told me yesterday?" "What?" "She said she likes our new life better than our old one because I'm not angry all the time anymore. She said I used to be scary when I talked about money, but now I'm fun when I talk about my work." I felt tears prick my eyes, tears of pride, of relief, of love for the man my son had become. "David, what are you going to tell the defense team?" He turned from the window and smiled, and it was the same smile I remembered from his childhood, genuine, uncomplicated, full of integrity. "I'm going to tell them that some things aren't for sale. My testimony isn't for sale, my conscience isn't for sale, and the respect of my family isn't for sale. Even though it means staying in this apartment, driving used cars, living paycheck to paycheck. Mom, look around this room. Really look. My wife is helping my daughter with homework instead of planning shopping trips. My son is building something with his own hands instead of demanding that we buy him whatever he wants. I come home from work excited to see them instead of stressed about affording them." He sat back down beside me, and for the first time in a year, he took my hand. "I'm happier now than I was when I had everything. How could $5 million improve on that?" The next morning, I accompanied David to the district attorney's office. We sat in the waiting room together, and I watched him review his testimony one final time. Not to change it, but to make sure he remembered every detail that would help convict the people who had stolen from ordinary families trying to build better futures. Mrs. Harrington? Detective Martinez appeared in the doorway. Your son just refused $5 million and reaffirmed his commitment to testifying for the prosecution. I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like it. You've never seen integrity before, Detective? Not when it costs $5 million, I haven't. David emerged from the meeting room looking tired but peaceful. It's done, Mom. I told them everything, and I'm going to testify at trial. Any regrets? Just one. My heart stopped. What? I regret that it took me so long to realize that you raised me better than I was acting. As we walked out of the building together, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year. Unconditional pride in my son. The ultimate test was over. David had chosen integrity over wealth, truth over comfort, family over money. He had chosen to be the man I raised him to be instead of the stranger who had broken my heart. 3 months remained in his year of redemption, but as far as I was concerned, he had already earned back everything he had lost, and more. He had earned back his soul. The trial of Whitmore Investment Group began on a crisp October morning, exactly 11 months after David's birthday wish had shattered our family. I sat in the gallery of Suffolk County Superior Court, watching my son take the witness stand with the dignity of a man who had nothing left to hide. The transformation was complete and visible to everyone in that courtroom. Gone was the arrogant investment banker in expensive suits. In his place sat a man in a modest navy blazer, his hair slightly longer than his corporate days, his face carrying the kind of peace that comes from sleeping with a clear conscience. District Attorney Michael Chen, no relation to my friend Margaret, but equally sharp, approached the witness stand with the confidence of a prosecutor who knew he held the winning cards. Mr. Harrington, please tell the court about your role at Whitmore Investment Group. I was a senior investment advisor specializing in retirement portfolios for clients aged 55 and older. And how long did you work there? 8 years. During that time, were you aware of any irregular practices regarding client funds? David's voice was steady, clear. Yes, I was. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I watched the defense table where David's former colleagues sat with their high-priced lawyers, their faces masks of barely controlled rage. Can you describe these practices for the court? The firm was systematically moving client money into high-risk investments without proper disclosure. We were told to target older clients specifically because they were less likely to monitor their accounts closely or understand the complex financial instruments we were using. Did you participate in these practices? This was the moment I had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. David paused, looked directly at me in the gallery, then back at the prosecutor. Yes, I did. The honesty in his voice was like a blade cutting through years of lies and self-deception. Why did you participate? Because I was making a lot of money, and I convinced myself that the clients were getting good returns, so no one was really being harmed. I was wrong. People were being harmed, and I chose to ignore it because acknowledging it would have cost me my lifestyle. District Attorney Chen walked him through the details methodically. Account numbers, investment amounts, falsified documents, forged signatures. David answered every question with precision, never hesitating, never trying to minimize his own culpability. Mr. Harrington, the defense has suggested that you're testifying against your former colleagues in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Is that true? No, it's not. Then why are you testifying? David was quiet for a moment, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. Because 9 months ago, I tried to steal from my own mother. I convinced myself it was for her own good, that I was protecting her, but the truth was, I was planning to take everything she had worked for and call it love. The courtroom was completely silent now. This wasn't the testimony anyone had expected. My mother taught me that actions have consequences, and that some things are more important than money. She taught me that integrity isn't something you can buy or sell. It's something you either have or you don't. And do you have it now? I hope so. I'm trying to earn it back by telling the truth about what we did to people who trusted us with their life savings. The cross-examination was brutal. David's former colleague's attorney, a shark in a $1,000 suit, attacked David's credibility, his motivations, his character. He painted him as a bitter ex-employee seeking revenge, a liar trying to save himself by destroying others. Through it all, David remained calm, consistent, unshakable. Mr. Harrington, isn't it true that you're only testifying because your mother cut you out of her will? My mother restructured her estate because I tried to steal from her. She was protecting herself from me, and she was right to do so. Isn't it true that you're hoping this testimony will help you get back into her good graces? David looked directly at me, and I saw something in his eyes that took my breath away. Complete, unconditional love, without expectation. No, that's not true. Then why are you really here, Mr. Harrington? I'm here because 12 months ago, I was the kind of person who could look at elderly clients and see dollar signs instead of human beings. I was the kind of person who could plan to steal from his own mother and call it concern. I was the kind of person who valued money more than integrity. He paused, his voice growing stronger. I'm here because I don't want to be that person anymore. And if telling the truth about what we did helps even one family get their money back, then maybe I can start to forgive myself for who I used to be. The attorney tried a different approach. Mr. Harrington, you're aware that your former colleagues have offered you a substantial sum of money to change your testimony? Yes, I am. How substantial? $5 million. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Even the judge looked surprised by the amount. And you turned it down? I did. Why would you turn down $5 million? David smiled, and it was the same smile I remembered from his childhood. Pure, honest, free of calculation. Because I've learned that there are some things money can't buy. Peace of mind, self-respect, the ability to look at yourself in the mirror without shame, the chance to be the kind of father your children can be proud of. But $5 million, Mr. Harrington, that's life-changing money. You're right. It would have changed my life. It would have turned me back into the person I was a year ago, the person who hurt everyone I loved because I thought wealth was more important than character. The cross-examination continued for 2 more hours, but the damage was done. David's testimony was unshakable because it was completely truthful. He wasn't trying to hide his own guilt or minimize his own failures. He was simply telling the truth about what had happened and why. When court recessed for lunch, I met David in the hallway. Amanda was there with the children, and I watched Emma and Jake hug their father with pure adoration. "Daddy, you were so brave in there," Emma said. "Were you scared?" Jake asked. "A little," David admitted. "But sometimes being brave means doing the right thing, even when you're scared. Like when you told those mean lawyers the truth, even though they were trying to make you look bad," Emma asked. "Exactly like that." Amanda kissed him gently. "I'm so proud of you." I stood there watching this family, my family, and realized that we had all learned something profound over the past year. Love isn't about protecting people from consequences. Love is about helping them become strong enough to face those consequences and grow from them. "David," I said finally, "there's something I need to tell you." He looked at me with mild concern. "What is it, Mom?" "Your year of redemption is almost over." "I know. And you've exceeded every requirement I set for you." "Have I?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a legal document I had prepared that morning. "This is the restoration of your inheritance, effective immediately. Your trust fund, your place in my will, everything you lost has been returned to you." David stared at the document without touching it. "Mom, I don't want it." "What?" "I don't want the money. I want the relationship. I want to be your son not because of what you might leave me, but because of who we are to each other." I felt tears streaming down my face as I realized that my plan had worked beyond my wildest dreams. I hadn't just taught David about consequences. I had taught him about unconditional love. "Then tear up the document," I said, holding it out to him. He took the papers and without hesitation tore them in half. "I already have everything I need," he said, looking at his wife and children. "I have a family that loves me for who I am, not what I can give them. I have work that matters. I have peace of mind. What more could I possibly want?" As we walked back into the courtroom for the afternoon session, I realized that this trial was more than just about financial fraud. It was about the redemption of a soul, the restoration of a family, and the triumph of love over greed. My son had become the man I always knew he could be. And that was worth more than all the money in the world. 1 year to the day after David's birthday wish nearly destroyed our family, I found myself standing in the same kitchen where it all began. But this time, I wasn't alone. The house belonged to someone else now, but Carlos Mendoza had invited us for a celebration dinner, a gesture of kindness that perfectly illustrated how generosity creates more generosity. David stood beside me, helping to arrange flowers in the same vase where I had once displayed roses bought with money he thought he deserved. Amanda was setting the table with Elena Mendoza, their conversation flowing easily between English and Spanish as they discovered their shared love of cooking. My grandchildren were in the backyard with the Mendoza children, their laughter echoing through the same windows where I had once planned my son's downfall. "Mrs. Harrington," Carlos said, joining us in the kitchen, "I have something to show you." He led me to what had once been my home office, the room where I had spent countless nights building my legal practice and later planning my elaborate revenge. The space had been transformed into a library, its walls lined with books in multiple languages. "My children study here now," he said with pride. "But I wanted you to know that we found something when we were renovating." He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a framed photograph I had forgotten existed. It showed David at age 12, grinning broadly as he presented me with a handmade Mother's Day card that read, "To the strongest woman in the world, my mom." "I thought you might want this back," Carlos said gently. I took the photograph with trembling hands, remembering the boy who had once believed his mother could conquer anything, who had promised to take care of me when I got old, who had signed his name to renovation plans because he wanted to help make our house perfect. "That boy still exists, you know," Carlos said quietly. "I see him in your son's eyes now." The trial had concluded 3 weeks earlier with convictions on all counts. David's testimony had been the cornerstone of the prosecution's case, and his refusal to accept the $5 million bribe had made national news. The investment banker who chose integrity over money had become a symbol of redemption in a world that rarely believed such transformations were possible. But more importantly, David had kept every promise he had made to himself and to me. He had completed his year of service, his volunteer work, his counseling sessions. He had earned his MBA with honors while working full-time and raising his children. He had learned to find joy in simple pleasures and meaning in difficult work. He had become the man I raised him to be. As we gathered around the dinner table in the house that had witnessed both the death and rebirth of our relationship, I looked at the faces surrounding me. David and Amanda, their marriage stronger because it was now built on shared values rather than shared wealth. Emma and Jake, who had learned that happiness comes from family bonds rather than bank balances. The Mendoza family, who had welcomed us with the warmth that comes from understanding struggle and appreciating success. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, raising my glass of wine. Everyone turned toward me expectantly. 1 year ago, in this very room, my son made a birthday wish. He wished for me to disappear from his life. That wish broke my heart, but it also saved our family. David's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't look away. It saved our family because it forced us to confront who we had become and who we wanted to be. It taught us that love isn't about giving people what they want. It's about helping them become who they're meant to be. I looked directly at David, this man who had traveled so far from the stranger who had broken my heart. My son wished for me to disappear, and in a way I did. The bitter, broken woman who felt unloved and unappreciated disappeared. In her place is someone who learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the quality of our relationships and the integrity of our choices. "Mom," David said quietly, "I need to say something too." He stood, his hand shaking slightly as he raised his own glass. "A year ago, I was the kind of person who could look at everything my mother had sacrificed for me and see only what I thought I deserved. I was the kind of person who could plan to steal from the woman who raised me and call it love." His voice grew stronger as he continued. "But my mother did something incredible. She didn't just punish me for my greed. She created a path back to becoming the person she raised me to be. She showed me that consequences aren't about revenge. They're about redemption." He turned to face me fully. "Mom, You gave me the greatest gift any parent can give their child. You refused to enable my worst instincts, and you believed in my best ones even when I had forgotten they existed. The room was completely silent, except for the soft sounds of tears and muffled sobs. So tonight, on the anniversary of the worst thing I've ever said to another human being, I want to make a new wish. I wish for the chance to spend the rest of my life proving that I deserve to be Victoria Harrington's son. I stood and walked around the table to embrace this man who had traveled so far from selfishness to selflessness, from entitlement to gratitude, from greed to grace. David, I whispered in his ear, you already are. Later that evening, as our celebration wound down, I found myself alone with David on the back porch where he had once played as a child. The Boston skyline glittered in the distance, unchanged despite all the ways our lives had been transformed. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever regret it? Selling the house? Restructuring your estate? Putting us through everything we went through? I thought about the question seriously, considering all the pain and growth and ultimate joy of the past year. David, do you regret becoming the person you are now? Never. Then I regret nothing. Because the person you are now, the husband, the father, the man of integrity, he was worth every moment of heartbreak it took to find him. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the lights of the city where we had both learned that sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is refuse to make their children's bad choices easy. What happens now? David asked. I smiled, thinking about the new chapter we were all beginning to write. Now we live. We build relationships based on love instead of money. We make choices based on integrity instead of convenience. We remember that the best inheritance we can leave our children isn't wealth, it's character. And the money? The inheritance I tore up? David, look around you. Look at your wife who loves you for who you are. Look at your children who are proud of their father's courage. Look at the work that gives your life meaning. Look at the peace in your own heart. I reached over and took his hand. You already received your inheritance. You just had to earn it. As we prepared to leave that night, Carlos pulled me aside one final time. Victoria, I want you to know something. When I first immigrated to this country, I had nothing but hope and determination. I spent years building my business, always wondering if I was strong enough to give my children the opportunities they deserved. And, watching what you did for David, the courage it took to choose his character over your own comfort, you've shown me what real parental love looks like. Thank you for that. I looked around one last time at the house where I had raised my children, where I had built my dreams, where I had learned that sometimes love requires the wisdom to be cruel in the service of kindness. Carlos, take care of this place. Fill it with the love it was built for. As we drove away that night, David following behind us in his modest car with his precious family, I realized that my story wasn't really about revenge at all. It was about redemption. Not just David's redemption, but my own. I had learned that being a mother doesn't end when your children become adults. Sometimes it means loving them enough to let them fail, to face consequences, to discover their own strength in their own way. The birthday wish that had broken my heart had ultimately been the greatest gift my son could have given me. It forced us both to choose who we wanted to be rather than who we thought we had to be. And in the end, we chose love. Not the easy love that enables and excuses, but the difficult love that challenges and transforms. 6 months later, David was offered a position as Director of Ethical Compliance at a major Boston investment firm, a role created specifically for someone with his unique combination of industry knowledge and proven integrity. The salary was triple what he earned at Jonathan's firm, but more importantly, the work would help protect other families from the kind of fraud he had once participated in. It's poetic justice, he told me when he called with the news. I spent years helping people steal from families. Now I'll spend the rest of my career stopping people like who I used to be. Today, as I finish telling you this story, David and Amanda live in a beautiful home they bought with money they earned honestly. Emma and Jake are thriving in school, proud of their father's transformation, and secure in the knowledge that they are loved for who they are rather than what they might someday inherit. And me? I've learned that the most valuable thing I can leave my children isn't money in a bank account. It's the knowledge that they have the strength to build their own lives with integrity, courage, and love. Sometimes, the cruelest birthday wishes lead to the most beautiful transformations. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what really matters. Sometimes the greatest gift a mother can give her child is the opportunity to earn back what they threw away. My son wished for me to disappear from his life. Instead, we both discovered who we really were when everything else was stripped away. And that discovery was worth more than all the money in the world.